Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. As we approach the top of the next hour, we want to get out back to Los Angeles overhead. It does seem like this modest-sized group of protesters have now moved onto the interstate there, disrupting traffic. Obviously, this is extremely dangerous for these demonstrators to make moves like this. You can see there traffic now at a complete standstill. While we were in the commercial break, they kind of made a mad dash for the highway there. And you can see this is right now overhead. It's almost 4 p.m. there in Los Angeles. Even more of these protesters now making their way onto the highway, onto the interstate, much like they did over the weekend. So like I said, obviously this presents great dangers to not only the protesters themselves, but also the motorists who are just going about their day, having now to contend with these demonstrators blocking traffic. So you can see there, many of them now running. Actually, it looks like those might be credentialed photographers from the press. And we do see law enforcement now, as you can see there. So just a matter of time now before law enforcement will disrupt this and hopefully restore full and wide access to the interstate there. And you can see the kind of unfurling and the hoisting of Mexican flags, much like we have seen throughout the course of the last 5 days. You also see a dog there on a leash, one of these protesters has brought. So look at that. Look at the traffic backup right now. So this is quite something. We're going to keep these live aerial pictures up. This is of a piece of what we have been showing you, like I said, throughout the course of the last several days. This is night 5. But even more of these protesters now coming into blocked traffic. And you saw there when the choppers zoomed out how much traffic is now being blockaded by these protesters. So law enforcement is on the scene, as you can see now. But we didn't see this last night. We did not see a full-scale blocking of highway traffic in downtown Los Angeles. We did see that over the weekend, and now this tactic being deployed again. Now take a look at that. Traffic really getting backed up. This is almost in the heart of rush hour. You see there all the police cruisers right now. Okay, so you can see now they are going into the outer bound lanes in the other direction. This is extremely dangerous. And so you just kind of have to wonder that the cause which they are so committed to, they are now risking their lives and the lives of drivers. So it remains to be seen how law enforcement will bring this under control now that both northbound and southbound lanes have protesters in the middle of them, blocking traffic. Okay, you see some law enforcement cruisers there. So right now, I think this is a good opportunity. We're going to keep these live vantage points up. We're going to bring into the conversation right now a guest that we relied on his expertise just yesterday at this very same time. That's retired Major General Randy Manner. He joins me. Sir, thanks so much for joining us yet again here. If you would explain to our viewers what we are seeing right now. This is extremely dynamic. It's almost the top of the hour. And you can see there projectiles being thrown. That's a California Highway Patrol vehicle. This is in the middle of rush hour traffic, Randy.
Yes, this is unfortunate, and obviously the LAPD and state police are responding to this change of tactics And that's exactly what they should be doing. And I'm sure that their command and control center, you'll see massive numbers of law enforcement, state police beginning to show up, and they will clear this road. I would guesstimate in the next hour or less. This is something where well-coordinated law enforcement are, again, appropriate force for the appropriate situation.
And now you can see things are really, really getting testy and tense. And, you know, the fact that the problem and the difficulty with trying to corral these demonstrators into one area, and that's what we've seen all throughout the course of the afternoon, that, you know, some of these smaller camps form, and it's even more difficult for law enforcement to get them under control here. I mean, take a look at that. That is a major interstate in the second largest city in the country, and traffic at rush hour brought to a standstill because of this here. Now, when you were on last night, I was asking you about whether or not deploying Marines was premature, whether or not federalizing the National Guard by President Trump, whether or not that was overblown or premature. Do you still feel that? You were coming down on the side that that was not necessary last night. Do you still agree with that sentiment, or is this changing your mind, Randy?
I absolutely believe that the law enforcement capabilities of the county and of the state are sufficient. These groups appear to be groups of perhaps 100 people. There are literally thousands of law enforcement people that are converging on Los Angeles that are being moved there by the governor. And so you'll see more and more, just like the police chief had said, more and more police on the street responding to these pop-up scenarios. I stand by my statement strongly that putting the Marines out there is extremely dangerous. Marines are absolutely trained to take that hill, to take out a target, to use overwhelming force, to be able to achieve superiority with minimum loss of life of their own Marines. They are excellent in a combat situation. I worked side by side with them and multiple times throughout my military career. We couldn't be prouder of those young Marines. The challenge is those are not the young Marines we want to put on the streets of an American city for the same reasons.
Yeah, just having now
so
covered this.
I stand by my comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, thank you. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Just having covered this now for 48 hours, the majority of law enforcement have seen have been National Guard troops and local and state law enforcement. And that leads me to my next question. The fact that the Marines have not been deployed, if you want to use that word, to downtown Los Angeles. So there have been no Marines yet deployed. They're preparing. They're in preparation mode. I have to ask, because we have not seen the Marines anywhere near any of this, does that undercut the necessity of bringing them in? If it was so urgent, I'm asking, playing for the sake of argumentation here, if it was so urgent, would they have already been there by now?
So to move a battalion of Marines, even in the best conditions, will require at least 24 hours, typically 48 hours to deploy a battalion of Marines, unless, of course, they're already on a ship ready to go. So to move them in this way domestically could take a couple of days. And remember, please, they've got to equip them with the right equipment, which is different from what they would go into combat with. And then secondly, they would also ensure that they had sufficient just-in-time training of how to work with law enforcement and how to, into the concept of the rules for the use of force, which right now, I've been scouring the internet and have not seen the publishing of the rules for use of force either by the National Guard or by the Marines.
Okay, but hypothetically, and Marines are not in this melee here that we're seeing right now, arrests being forcibly made by California Highway Patrol, I would imagine LAPD, and they're making some progress with moving this crowd back so traffic can get back up and running. You see there on the other side, traffic is back. It's not so there on the other side. But I have to ask, you know, Marines were being deployed to protect federal property and to protect federal workers. Same with the federalization of the National Guard. They were also being used for crowd control. So if they were there present on the scene here, we would be seeing them do that, correct? That is crowd control. They don't have the power to arrest or detain anyone, but they're there for crowd control, or will be, so to speak.
So I have not seen the specific orders that were given to the National Guard. I have read about what the kinds of missions they would have in terms of providing security to the federal buildings. It is probably still that the LAPD has responsibility for ensuring, as we're seeing in the video here, ensuring that there is safe passage of traffic and transport and that citizens are kept safe. So I believe that is what is happening. You'll notice that literally they cleared that from the time they first stepped on the road to the time that they left the road, on the other side at least. It was a matter of 15 minutes. That was pretty darn quick. And remember, please, that I am positive there are absolutely more LAPD on the way, because that's how they do this, by watching through the helicopter and surveillance to be able to say, where do we need to send more forces? The National Guard, other law enforcement entities, as well as the National Guard, will be there ready if needed. And that is even if they were under the control of the governor, of course.
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat taken aback by the rapidity with which law enforcement pushed these protesters back, moved them back. They're no longer on the interstate there. And they made a bum rush for the interstate when you had just come on with me. That was what, about 10, 12 minutes ago. Right. Very master work there by law enforcement. You still have some stragglers there now being detained. I want to talk about something we discussed yesterday, because the president was asked about this, whether or not he thinks that it will eventually require the authorization or the implementation of what's known as the Insurrection Act. You've heard that term a lot, Randy, over the last 5 days here. He was essentially leaving the door open. He didn't rule it out completely. The Insurrection Act, for viewers who don't know, what is it? Could it be used here? Should it be used here?
Okay. It's a law that literally from the late 1700s that allows the president to deploy military forces under specific circumstances to enforce federal laws or suppress rebellions when state governments are unwilling or unable to do so. We're talking about hundreds of people over localized places. We are a country of hundreds of millions of people. This is not an insurrection. This is a civil disturbance issue, and with some obviously bad actors probably sprinkled in among them that are causing more havoc rather than peaceful protests. It's all about what is the appropriate level of force that should be provided and demonstrated, rather than it being just, let's go ahead and put armed military soldiers and Marines on every street corner or every overpass. That's just not needed. I would like to compare and contrast this, please, for a second. Remember, after 9/11, President Bush put National Guardsmen armed into all the airports. And the objective of that was to give the impression and to be able to provide solace and comfort and demonstrate security for the American people as they use the airports for air travel. That was a very wise choice, because there weren't enough law enforcement to do all the other jobs that we had when we were reeling literally from an attack from without the United States, from outside of the United States. That was an appropriate use of the National Guard in support of local authorities. This particular example of federalizing the National Guard and in overwhelming numbers compared to the threat is just it's just too much for what is being for what the issue is. That's what I'm just trying to say.
Sure.
The president this is a legal act of the president I'm not questioning that. I'm just questioning, do we need to have such a firm iron fist that demonstrates this? Because sometimes a firm iron fist can have unintended consequences, particularly if this results in, quite frankly, unsettling or unsettled populations across our country.
Yeah.
In other words, we need to de-escalate, not escalate.
So, yeah, Randy, to your point, and I want to reiterate this, you're right that the president has the authority to do this, and he is exercising that. We've made that known. I also have to ask you this. Essentially, this is an emergency, and emergencies have an end date. They expire, and then everyone goes home. I mean, everyone, the National Guard is no longer federalized. The Marines go back to 29 Palms here. Do we know when that's going to be? Is there a hard end date for their deployment, for their federalization? Or is that going to be left up to the courts? Because playing out in the courts right now, Randy, you know this, is the Newsom administration and the Trump administration. A judge denied the Newsom administration's request for an emergency temporary restraining order about the use of Marines. They're going to have another hearing on that Thursday afternoon here. So not as immediate as California Governor Newsom would have liked. But what do you make of that? Is this ultimately for the courts to decide when this is over?
I think the first thing that has to happen is you have to return stability to this area. In other words, you have to get the people off the street. You have to de-escalate this and get people, again, off the streets. I believe that the LAPD and the mayor are going to be able to accomplish that. And then at that point, they start sending home numbers of guardsmen. And then I would hope certainly the Marines should be able to return back home to their families as well. And to be prepared, quite frankly, for combat operations, which is what their primary mission is. So I personally do not know when this will end. I believe it is something where they have to determine who are the agitators exactly and be able to arrest and detain those individuals while at the same time ensuring that there are peaceful, appropriate demonstrations, not where they are blocking traffic, not where they are throwing things at police and other law enforcement officers. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, I just want to read. So the filing by the Newsom administration included a declaration from a guy by the name of Paul Eck. He's the Deputy General Counsel in the California Military Department. Eck said the department has been informed the Pentagon plans to direct the California National Guard to start providing support for immigration operations. That support would include holding secure perimeters around areas where raids are taking place and securing streets for immigration agents here. So we still have this live vantage point at that very same intersection right outside of the federal building there in downtown. This is up in the air, and so law enforcement has been successful in moving them off the I-10. And so that is somewhat of a success here. You see traffic about to get back to normal, though still backed up in this direction. Take a look at that. It's not moving, presumably because on the ground, this is what it looks like. Take a look at this. So from what I understand, that's on the ground. That is why the freeway on that side of the highway is not moving, because all of those cruisers, they're parked there and they're preparing, they're making and readying themselves for some of these potential clashes we could see throughout the course of the evening here. We are going to take a quick commercial break, our first one of this new hour. Randy Manner still on with me. Before we let you go, your final thoughts here, sir.
So I just encourage everyone, whether it's the protesters or whether it's the law enforcement or whether it's the National Guardsmen and the Marines, for everyone just to remember that we are all Americans. I'm not talking about the illegal immigrants. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the law enforcement people. I'm talking about the military people. We are all Americans, and we need to be able to treat each other with dignity and respect the way we would like to be treated. And so some compassion, while we obviously maintain law and order, is so very important. And I just hope that the military do not get involved and this remains a law enforcement operation, not a military operation. And I appreciate your reporting and the ability to be able to have this conversation. It's important for all of us as Americans to hear this.
So you just reminded me of another question I have. Could you see a scenario in where the Marines aren't used at all?
Absolutely. Yes, I could see that. It will be up to the president. He might decide that he just wants to show them. They went all that way, so he's going to put them on the street in some capacity for some period of time and then perhaps pull them off. It is possible they may not ever be used. I can't predict what the president would choose to do.
All right, Randy Manner, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
We might even be speaking tomorrow night. You never know. Thanks so much, sir.